How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I am an avid herpetologist here with a video I've been looking forward to making for a while now. We are finally going to be doing a quick deep dive video on Aegisdramon. This is a deck that I was really looking forward to coming out of the EX3 set, Dragonic Roar. It's a very cool deck. It's kind of had little bits of support here and there, but as of EX3, we finally actually have a dedicated deck that can be built around the idea of playing Digimon from Digivolution sources. It's a very unique take on Blue. Blue tends to be very into stripping sources and bouncing things. It's had a lot of different decks over the years, but this is one in particular I'm a huge fan of. This is also the very first ever dedicated ocean-themed Digimon deck, which again, I'm a huge fan of. I've got my Sea Turtle Rescue shirt on. I actually did Sea Turtle Rescue for several years. I'm a big fan of marine life, so very excited to actually have a fish deck that I can play in Digimon now. So this video is probably going to be a little bit on the longer side. The cool thing about Aegisdramon is there is a vast ocean, no pun intended, of support cards that you can use in this archetype. Now, depending on how you want to build your deck, there is a wide range of ways to go about it. We're going to definitely talk about the more traditional ways, but I'm also going to be covering a lot of the other support cards that you can potentially use if you decide that you want to go a different direction with it. So to begin with, this is kind of the centerpiece card right here. We're going to be talking about him a little bit later. He is a level 7. This is Aegisdramon. Basically, the whole theme of this deck, as I mentioned, is building stacks and playing Digimon out of Digivolution sources. Now, the big bulk of the effects are specifically going to be playing level 3 Digimon, or level 4 Digimon with Aquatic, and then once you get all the way, or basically any number of different conditions. There's erratas. It's kind of messy. Honestly, I'm not going to go into all of the things that are included in the Aquatic sub-theme, but I will be covering some of the ones that are included through the erratas. Again, it's very messy. If you want to get a full comprehensive list of all of the cards that are housed under that umbrella, I would suggest trying to look it up online, but I will be covering at least a big bulk of the playable ones in this video. So to begin with, we're going to be starting by talking about eggs, of course. Really the only egg I really want to talk about for this deck is the primary one you're going to be running, and that is Bukamon. So this Bukamon is from BT7 and has the inheritable where on your turn, once per turn, when you play a Digimon from your Digivolution sources, gain a memory. Now you, of course, can use any number of completely usable blue eggs. Upamon is still a completely good generic egg if you want card draw, but generally speaking, when you're playing Aegisdramon, however you want to pronounce it, I'm going to be saying Aegisdramon. If that's incorrect to you, I apologize. I'm going to be pronouncing it that way. I'm committing to it. So, Bukamon here is really going to be your catch-all egg. So it's the egg that is made for this dedicated theme of playing Digimon out. Gaining a memory basically lets you extend your plays really well, especially when you get multiple Digimon in play that ideally have this inheritable. Plus, coming up in BT11, we actually are going to be getting a new ultimate level Digimon, level 5, Aegisdramon, which is going to share this inheritable. Even better, Aegisdramon is an all-turns effect. So on both turns, if you play a Digimon, then you can gain memory. So being able to double up on that effect is going to be really exciting. I'm super excited to see what this deck is able to do in BT11. But, as I mentioned, that is really going to be the primary egg you play. Now, if you decide to play 5, you can easily play, Upamon or other eggs of that nature, but generally speaking, and for my builds personally, I'm just playing the 4 Bukamon just because that is the egg that is most dedicated to this particular strategy. But we've got quite a few other cards to talk about, so we are going to start talking about our rookies, the level 3s. To begin with, the primary level 3, kind of the one that has been around the longest, dedicated for this archetype, that is going to be Gomamon from BT7. Now, you will absolutely want to be playing 4 copies of these no matter what your list looks like. This Gomamon has an in-play effect where on play, if this card was played from Digivolution sources, draw 2 cards. A great source of card advantage, and since this is on a level 3, all of your effects that are going to be playing things from sources will be able to bring this out. The good news is all of the abilities that are bringing out level 3s from sources are not specific to the Digimon's type, so it doesn't matter. Now, it does fit the aquatic theme, but it really doesn't need to, as I mentioned, because since it's level 3, it's all pretty much generic. The other next level 3 we're going to be talking about is one of the new ones from EX3, and that is the new EX3 Crabmon. Now this Crabmon is 3 to play, 2000 DP, has an on play where one of your blue Digimon gains jamming for the turn. Then if this Digimon was played from Digivolution sources, you may play a level blue or a blue level 5 or lower Digimon card from your hand and tuck it underneath of that Digimon's Digivolution sources. So when this gets played, you can give something jamming, then you can tuck something from your hand that is level 5 or lower underneath it. So you basically are providing another card that you will then be able to play out with a different effect. That's ideally what this card's going for. And the fact that it gives jamming lets you be really aggressive, not only with your upper level Digimon, but this can give any of your Digimon jamming. So if you have rookies or champions that are able to swing, you can also give those jamming and get a little bit of extra early aggression. So this card is really, really cool. And you'll start to notice that the ability to tuck extra sources is super important for making sure that this deck maintains its gas. So very, very powerful card. Now my third rookie of choice, the one that I'm also running 4 copies of in my personal list, is going to be Gabumon from BT1. Basically just a toned down version of Gomamon, where it is 3 to play, 1000 DP, and has on play, draw a single card. So if you play this from your hand or Digivolve it onto an egg, doesn't matter, you're still going to draw your card. As I mentioned, it's just kind of a toned down version of Gomamon. Now, come BT11, again, we are going to be getting a new rookie called Penguinmon that will be replacing Gabumon in my personal lists. So this is really just here because I personally think it's the best generic placeholder at the moment, but we've still got several other rookies that we're going to be talking about. Another really good option you can play is Dracomon from the Ulforce Aegisdramon starter deck. So Dracomon has an effect where it's 3 to play, it's 2000 DP. On play, reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, and then you can add any Digimon card with Dramon in its name from among them to your hand, put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. So this is where we're going to start getting into options that are going to vary depending on how you decide to build your personal list. So Dracomon, ideally, as obviously, you're going to want to be stacking your deck with more Dramon cards than some other lists might have, especially as we get into champions and ultimates and things like that. We have a lot of options available. Not all of them are Dramons. So Dracomon is going to be a great card for certain lists, but again, you're going to want to tailor your list around this card if you choose to run it. Next up, we have, of course, the standard Floodgates in blue are absolutely perfectly good options. Madoki Betamon and Syakomon probably need no introduction. They are both Floodgates where, while in play, Madoki Betamon makes sure that your opponent cannot gain memory, and Syakomon makes it so your opponent cannot reduce Digivolution costs. So if you're worried about any particular decks in your meta, you may consider taking in a few copies of these. They are absolutely serviceable, very powerful cards. And just some other spicy tech options that you might consider. There is, of course, Jamming Vmon, where if you're playing it out of sources, you may want it to get in with a little bit of jamming damage, Digivolve on top of it, play it back out. There's lots of different neat plays that you can potentially do with this deck. There's a lot of really cool lines, and the more you play this deck, you start to learn the different directions that you can go. So I think playing Jamming Vmon is possible. It's not necessarily something I'm going to run in my personal list, but again, depending on how you want to build your deck, you can build it around different things that may actually want to see this card in it. So that's just something you might want to consider. And the final card I wanted to mention is the Promo Jellymon. This is the card that kind of hallmarks the namesake of Jellyforce, where this card, as long as you have a Kiyoshiro Tamer in play, the Inheritable lets you draw a card on attack. So it's a good source of card advantage. It is kind of okay. Again, if you decide to play a bunch of Kiyoshiro Tamers, maybe you can consider this as a decent Inheritable, but that's going to really be up to you. Obviously, this is not the only rookies. These are not the only rookies that you can play in this deck. This is already going to be a very long video, so I'm going to try to keep these at least a little bit shorter. I just wanted to talk about some of the potentially better options you could be playing in Aegisdramon. It's a very, very neat deck, and like I said, there's a lot of directions to go with it. So that's going to do it for our rookies. Now we're going to move up into our champions, and there's a lot of cool stuff to talk about with the champions too. So champions, excuse me, there's going to be a few more effects that can play these out as long as they are aquatic or housed under the aquatic effect umbrella. To begin with, we're going to be talking about things that are included in that umbrella. Specifically, we're going to start with Aegisdramon, the card from EX3. So there are now 2 copies of Aegisdramon. We'll talk about both of them. But this Aegisdramon is 5 to play, 5000 DP, 2 to Digivolve, has an on-play where one of your Digimon gains blocker, and if you play it out of your sources, you can also unsuspend that Digimon. So it's a great source of additional aggression if you decide to go that route where you can unsuspend and swing again. It also gives blocker, so if you end your turn by playing this out, you then unsuspend something and give that card blocker. It's also important to note that Aegisdramon here does not need to be played from sources to give blocker. It just needs to be played from sources to do the unsuspend effect. So if you're short on blockers and need an extra body on the field, you can play this from your hand and give anything you want on your field blocker and have that extra body. So that is something that's worth noticing. The other most common level 4 that you're going to see this deck running is Tobiomon. Tobiomon is from BT4. It is a vanilla, meaning it does not have any effects, not even inheritables. It's only 3 to play, 3000 DP, and 1 to digivolve. It's basically in here because it is housed as an aquatic card, which means you can play it out anytime you are playing effects that can play things under that aquatic umbrella. It's also only 3 to play, so as far as hard playing from your hand, it's essentially a rookie, which lets you climb your ladders a little bit faster, and that 1 Digivolution cost is very important as well. One of the big things that this deck is really great at is playing out rookies. You can Digivolve on top of it with one of your champions, Tobiomon being a great option. Then if you have another effect that can play a rookie out again, then you can play the rookie out, Digivolve on top, play the rookie out, Digivolve on top. Basically lets you build an incredibly wide board very quickly. So Tobiomon is one of the best enablers of that strategy. Another great enabler for that strategy is Sealamon. Now, Sealamon here, and yes, I'm pronouncing it Sealamon. For those of you who don't know, this Digimon is based off of the real-life coelacanth. It is an ancient fish. I heard a lot of people pronouncing it Coelamon. Maybe that's the proper pronunciation, but I've always pronounced it Sealamon because I know what it is based off of, so I'm going to use that just because I can. But Sealamon is 6 to play, 5000 DP, is 1 to Digivolve again, so again, that nice cheap Digivolution cost, so you can go on top of a rookie and try to keep extending plays. But it's also a blocker, so this one is going to be able to give you nice cheap blocker bodies. If you have multiples of these in your hand, keep playing rookies, and you basically can expand your board with extra blockers, which is really nice. It does have that attack tax, which is losing 2 memory when attacking, so not ideal there, but at the same time, when you're talking about, ending the game, you can always just use this as your final attacker, and it's not really going to cost you much. Other options, we do have other aquatic Digimon we can talk about. Specifically, we can talk about Aegisdramon. Now, Aegisdramon is housed under the aquatic umbrella. However, currently there is not much reason to be running Aegisdramon. Aegisdramon is currently outclassed by the other version of Aegisdramon, which has an almost identical stat line, but has 1000 extra DP. So even though these are both housed under the aquatic umbrella, they both are 3 to play, 2 to Digivolve. Aegisdramon has 4000 DP, Aegisdramon has 5000 DP. Other than that, the only real difference is that's honestly pretty much it for right now. We don't have support that really cares about one versus the other. Dracomon, if you choose to run Dracomon, can find either of these off the top. You can hard play them for the same amount. The only difference is Aegisdramon comes with that extra 1000 DP, making it more worth it. However, come BT11, there's another new card coming out called Maelstrom. Maelstrom is kind of like a Kaisernail. It's an option card that lets you play something from sources. Then if you control a Digimon with Aegisdramon in its name, you can also tuck one of your opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon to the bottom of their deck. So if you decide to go the route and play Maelstrom, which I am absolutely doing, at that point, come BT11, you will be incentivized to play Aegisdramon over Aegisdramon if that's the route you decide to go. But currently, if you're playing in the BT10 EX3 format, there's really no reason to be playing Aegisdramon over Aegisdramon, other than, of course, the love for Aegisdramon, which, to be fair, I have. But also, if you want to make this deck the best that it is, it's straight upside to just go ahead and play Aegisdramon instead of Aegisdramon currently. But again, BT11, that's going to change. There will be extra incentive to play Aegisdramon instead. Now, we do have other Digimon to talk about. The last aquatic Digimon that I wanted to talk about, which is kind of cool, is Submarimon. Now, Submarimon is considered an aquatic Digimon, so it's under that umbrella. It is 4 to play, 4000 DP, but it's 3 to Digivolve, so it's a little bit steep in that regard. Now, it does have the ability to Digivolve for only 2 memory from an Armadillomon. So again, if you want to go super spicy, there are blue Armadillomons you can play that in your rookie slots over something else if you decide that you wanted to play this card. This card has a when Digivolving effect, where you can trash the bottom Digivolution card of one of your opponent's Digimon, and then one of your opponent's Digimon with no Digivolution cards get minus 3000 DP until the end of the turn. Now, there is one very, very reasonable reason that I can see people wanting to play Submarimon, and that is Floodgates. This deck loses very, very hard to 2 Floodgates in particular. There is Pillowmon in yellow and Pamumon in green that both say, on all turns, you cannot play Digimon by effects. That is the entire game plan of this deck. So if you do not have a way to out Pamumon or Pillowmon, and they are stuck on the field, you are going to have a very difficult time actually pushing through a win. You are shutting down basically the entire idea that this deck is built around. So Submarimon is potentially a good out to that, where you can Digivolve onto a rookie and kill one of those floodgates. So that is absolutely something that you can consider. Now, it does also have Armor Purge, so if it would die, it would go back into that rookie. Kind of flavor text in this deck. I mean, having that protection is, of course, always nice, but you don't really need that effect, and it is worth mentioning that the removal is not from on play, it is from when Digivolving, so you are going to have to, unfortunately, learn how to play around that, but hey, if you want to play like 1 or 2 copies of it, it is absolutely serviceable. I think Submarimon is a reasonable option. Another cool card to consider is going to be Cordramon from Structure Deck Ulforce Vidramon. This is 6 to play, 5000 DP, 2 to Digivolve, has a security effect where you play it at the end of the security check. On play, you can also draw 2 cards. So, be able to get some extra surprise aggression out of your security, which is, of course, really nice. Will absolutely steal some games if your opponent isn't prepared for it and doesn't play around it. And is not super backbreaking in your hand either. As I mentioned, 6 to play to draw 2 isn't the worst, and 2 to Digivolve is pretty standard, so worth considering that. Now we're going to start branching out into some more niche tech options. The first tech option I want to mention is Garurumon from BT1. So depending on how you want to build your deck, again, there are some mega level options that can play out any level 4 Digimon. This Garurumon is 6 to play, 5000 DP, 2 to Digivolve, and has an on-play to unsuspend one of your Digimon. So if you decide to build around a more aggressive unsuspend and swing strategy, something you can also do with Aegisdramon, they both have that same kind of similar effect, Garurumon will let you unsuspend and get that extra aggression. Now, Garurumon is not housed under the aquatic umbrella, so you will not be able to play this off most of the archetype-specific support. However, as I mentioned, there are other options that can play this card out, and we're going to be talking about those in a bit. Continuing on with that theme of being able to play out generic level 4s, we have, of course, Leomon, 6 to play, 4000 DP, 2 to Digivolve. On the opponent's turn, if you have a Tamer in play, this Digimon has blocker, and on deletion, gain 2 memory and draw a card. So a really oppressive and very potent blocker that you can use. This card will definitely make your opponent think twice before attacking. Definitely worth a consideration. We also have Gorillamon. Now this one's pretty obscure, but hear me out. So this is a card from EX2 actually. Again, 6 to play, 5000 DP, 2 to Digivolve. On play, you may play a level 3 Digimon card from one of your blue Digimon's Digivolution sources without paying its memory cost. So basically, if you have an effect that can bring him out, he can then bring out another level 3 Digimon from one of your other Digimon sources. So again, it's expanding on that idea of going very wide very quickly. And last, of course, depending on how you want to play, if you're playing lots of Tamers, of course, you can always finish with a couple of hybrids, things like Korikakumon, Lobomon, Kumamon. The little hybrids are kind of worn out at this point, but, you know, they are always completely viable options, so it's something worth considering as well. So this is a very wide champion suit. As I mentioned, I'm trying to keep these at least somewhat brief because there's already a lot to talk about. But that is going to do it for our champion suit. So we'll go ahead and clean these up here. Now moving on up to our ultimates. Our ultimates also have quite a few very cool cards to talk about. And we're going to begin with Aegisdramon from EX3. This is the ultimate level from the line that was brought out in EX3 to support this playstyle. So Aegisdramon has one in play when attacking. You can play out a blue level 3 Digimon card from one of your blue Digimon sources without paying its memory cost. So this lets you swing and already get that effect. So this is where we're starting to see those effects really start to come into play, where these are the ones that are actually going to let you do what the deck is trying to accomplish. So Aegisdramon can, on attack, bring one of them out. It also has an inheritable of the exact same wording, where when attacking once per turn, you may play a blue level 3 Digimon card from the Digivolution sources of one of your blue Digimon without paying its memory cost. Now, it is worth mentioning, the inheritable is when attacking once per turn. The when attacking while in play is not. So if you have a way to unsuspend this, a la Aegisdramon or Garurumon, whatever the case is, you are able to attack and you will get the effect off a second time. So super cool there. The other most common card I think you're going to see in this deck in the level 5 slot is Waymon. Waymon is 8 to play, 7000 DP, 3 to Digivolve, and has the on-play that you can play a level 3 Digimon card from one of your Digimon's Digivolution sources without paying its memory cost. If you do, you can then tuck another blue Digimon at the bottom of one of your blue Digimon's Digivolution cards. So Waymon is again going to fit that general theme of it's an aquatic. You can play it out since it is from one of your other Digimon, since it is an aquatic, using Aegisdramon's effect. Then Waymon again lets you play out another thing from a source. So basically, again, play a body, play a body, play a body. You build very wide board states very quickly. Another really interesting tech option I've seen a lot of people trying out, and I'm curious to hear if you guys have had any success with it, is actually Piranimon from BT9. Now this Piranimon is interesting because it's under the aquatic umbrella, so you can play it out with Aegisdramon, but it's 6 to play, 7,000 DP, 3 to Digivolve, and has Rush. Now it's the Rush that's really got people interested, and I think it is at least worth talking about. However, the big issue with Piranimon is getting it into a situation where you can actually utilize the Rush. The problem with Piranimon is as a level 5, you basically need to Digivolve onto a level 4 that you just played out for that turn, and be able to swing then, because if you're just Digivolving, you don't really need the Rush. And if you're playing this out, the only other way to actually play this out of sources currently is with an effect like Kaiser Nail or with Aegisdramon himself. The problem with that is if you are Digivolving up into Aegisdramon, you're going to be paying 4 memory, ideally 3 if you gain 1 back from Bukamon. You could then potentially play this out and get an extra attack. That's really the primary use this is going to have. So going up into Aegisdramon, paying 4, as long as you had a memory setter and are doing this as your primary play for the turn, you can gain 1 back, keep your turn going, and get a free swing with Piranimon. I personally think that there are better things to be doing in the level 5 slot right now, but Piranimon is an interesting choice. I think it is definitely worth considering. Just be aware that it can be a little clunky to actually set up situations where you can actually utilize the Rush. Another card that one of my commenters actually turned me on to is Thetismon. So this is a really interesting Digimon that I've been trying out, and I've really liked it so far. So Thetismon is a Aqua Beast, which is considered to be under the aquatic umbrella. So Thetismon here is 7 to play, 7,000 DP, 3 to Digivolve. Has the when Digivolving effect, if you have 6 or fewer cards in your hand, you can then draw 2. So basically, if this is one of your first plays of the game, it'll let you get a bunch of extra advantage very early on. I like that it's on a when Digivolving effect. Of course, we want to be playing it out of sources, but having that on a when Digivolving effect is still very nice. And it does have a when attacking effect once per turn. If you have 8 or more cards in your hand, by trashing 2 of them, you can unsuspend this Digimon. So basically, this is potentially just a last little push if you're trying to end the game. This is really good with Crabmon if you're able to give it jamming. Just another really interesting option. Now, one of the guys from my locals also turned me on to another really cool card that you can play in your level 5 slots, Chimeramon. Now, I never considered Chimeramon just because this is a monocolored deck. It is a singular blue deck, so I didn't really think about playing Chimeramon a whole lot, but it actually does make sense. I like the idea of including this card. So Chimeramon, for those of you who don't know, this is a pretty generic card. You've probably seen it in other decks. It's really spicy in this one, and I'll explain why. So it's 8 to play, 8,000 DP, 4 to Digivolve, but it has a DNA Digivolution cost where you can use any 2 level 4 Digimon you have in play, combine them together, and pay 0 to Digivolve up into this. I'm not going to go into all of the mechanics behind DNA Digivolving. I'm sure you guys are probably already familiar. When Digivolving, you may place a level 5 or lower Digimon card from your trash under this Digimon as its bottom source. Then up to 4 of your opponent's Digimon get minus 1,000 DP for each of this Digimon's colors until the end of your opponent's turn. He also has an effect on your turn where this Digimon is treated as having the colors of its Digivolution sources, and if it has 4 or more colors, gets plus 4,000 DP. So we're not really worried about the plus 4,000. We're not going to get there, even if you choose to play Samarimon for the extra color. We're mostly interested in playing this card because you can use any level 4 Digimon. So if you're playing out a level 3, Digivolve into a level 4, play out a level 3, Digivolve into a level 4, now you already have the material for Chimeramon. It's very easy. This deck spams level 3s and level 4s like it is nobody's business. So being able to play those out, go wide, and then have a really nice game plan that can clinch you an extra attack, even though you have just played those cards out, it's really, really nice. And the ability to tuck something from your trash underneath it means you're, number one, helping to make sure that you have something that you can actually play out from underneath it, and you can potentially tuck really beneficial inheritables, things like the Aegisdramon inheritable, where on attacking you can continue to play things out. Again, very, very powerful. It's a really, really cool interaction. I'm currently playing 2 of these in my personal list. I have adjusted since I posted my Aegisdramon video, but yeah, really, really cool. I do highly suggest trying out Chimeramon. It is wacky in this deck. Other cards to try out. Now we're going to get into a little bit of copium here. You do have the option of at least trying BT1 Zudomon. Now, unfortunately, this has been my biggest sadness with this deck. This card is not under the aquatic umbrella. This is considered a sea beast, which for whatever reason is not included under the aquatic term. So this does not count and cannot be played off of Aegisdramon. But it is 7 to play, 6,000 DP, 3 to Digivolve, has an on play to simply draw 2 cards. Why? Why would they not just include it? I understand that, yes, there's the Japanese characters, they didn't quite translate, there's translation things going on, so it just wasn't included. But come on, I mean, this is definitely an aquatic Digimon. The Gomamon line is all considered aquatic. Gomamon himself is leading the charge for this deck. That was one of the very first support cards ever created strictly for this playstyle. Why couldn't you just include Zudomon in that umbrella? It'd be so cool to be able to play it out, draw 2 cards. It actually also has a really neat inheritable, which is one of the main reasons I'm still including it here. If you choose to go like the Kaiser Nail route where you can bring out whatever you want, this is still a worth considering card. But it has a when attacking inheritable, where if your opponent has a Digimon with no Digivolution sources, you can gain a memory. So that does at least have other uses. I think it is at least worth giving a short consideration to. There are definitely better options than this, but it is something you could, in theory, try to run. Having an on-play effect does make it worth considering for the theme. Speaking of hunt plays, there's another very obscure rare I just wanted to talk very briefly about, Marine Chimeramon. Now, Marine Chimeramon is 7 to play, has 7,000 DP, and 3 to Digivolve. Has an on-play where you can return one of your other blue Digimon to its owner's hand, to return one of your opponent's Digimon with no Digivolution sources also to its owner's hand. Trash all the Digivolution cards that were underneath of your own Digimon. So Marine Chimeramon, again, if you choose to build your deck around stripping sources, things like Sora Joe, there's actually some Megas that play around this effect really well, which I think is cool. You may consider Marine Chimeramon. I really don't think it's a super great card in the archetype, but it does, again, fit the theme. And depending on how you build your deck, you could consider playing this. So just something to keep in mind. You'll notice I'm talking about a lot of kind of obscure cards. I'm trying to go deep into this. That is why I call this a deep dive. There are plenty of cards to consider, not just the ones that are kind of archetype specific. And when it comes to brewing decks, I think it is a very real benefit to considering all of your options. That is how new decks get formed. Just because this is not generally accepted as mainstream, that doesn't mean it's not usable. So we're going to move on to our Megas now, beginning with our first Mega, the Mega for the archetype, and that is Plesiomon. Plesiomon is actually one of my favorite Megas. I think the Digimon itself is both cute and cool at the same time. I absolutely love it. It is 11 to play, 11,000 DP, 3 to Digivolve. Has a when Digivolving effect, where you may play any blue level 3 Digimon card, or a level 4 or lower Digimon with aquatic in its traits, again including that aquatic umbrella, without paying its memory cost. Then you may place a blue Digimon card from your hand onto this Digimon as its bottom Digivolution card. So the most typical thing you're going to be doing with this is tucking Aegisdramon. Aegisdramon and Plesiomon are really, again, the 2 primary level 6s you're going to see this deck playing. They are going to be facilitating the strongest plays that you're going to be making as far as Aegisdramon is concerned. Aegisdramon is really, really awesome. This is a card that I honestly have been wanting to play for a very long time. I mentioned this in my deck profile video. Aegisdramon is... He's had kind of a rough history. When the game first came out and he was released in one of the first couple of sets, he didn't really have a lot of use, just because his on-play effect bounces up to 2 of your opponent's Digimon that are level 4 or lower to their owner's hand. That's not a lot when you're considering having to pay 11. They can very easily probably just play both of those level 4 or lowers back out for less than you just passed them. So he really wasn't that great. Now, he does also have an effect where he can't be blocked if the blocker has Digivolution sources, but again, that's not super relevant most of the time. It basically just means if they hard play out a blocker, that it won't be able to block this guy, but that's not going to come up super often. But now that we have Aegisdramon able to play this card out for free, that effect is significantly stronger. Not having to pay the 11 makes bouncing 2 level 4 or lowers much, much better. And it gets even stronger when we couple it with Plesiomon's Inheritable. So Plesiomon's Inheritable says all turns, once per turn. When you play a Digimon from a Digivolution source, return one of your opponent's Digimon of the same level to the bottom of its owner's deck. So if you do have Plesiomon and Metalseedramon in the same stack, again, ideally Digivolving into Plesiomon, tucking Metalseedramon, and then Digivolving into Aegisdramon, you can play out Metalseedramon, bounce one of their Megas, and 2 of their level 4 lowers. So that's 3 bodies gone just by Digivolving up into a level 7. So big time board control, and it left you with not only your level 7, but a free Mega body on the field as well. These are the kind of plays that really give Aegisdramon its power and its versatility. So this is a deck, again, that is able to not only go wide, but being able to play out Megas like that is super, super cool. Now, Plesiomon is a Plesiosaur type Digimon, which means it is not included under the aquatic umbrella. Therefore, you cannot play Plesiomon out of Aegisdramon sources, but that's okay. We don't want to be playing Plesiomon out. We want to benefit from the Inheritable. Now, even though Metalseedramon is also not included in the aquatics, it is a cyborg, it does have the name Seedramon, so Aegisdramon is able to use it, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So we're going to talk about some other Megas. Another one that I see a lot of people running is King Waymon. Now, King Waymon is 12 to play, 11,000 DP, 4 to Digivolve. When attacking, you may play a level 3 Digimon or a Waymon from your Digivolution sources as another Digimon without paying its memory cost. So the big value behind this, of course, is it lets you dump Waymon, which is one of your level 5s, and then Waymon lets you play another body out, so it just kind of keeps cascading. It also has a Your Turn effect, where when you play a Digimon from one of your Digimon's Digivolution sources, return one of your opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon to its owner's hand, trash the sources. So King Waymon is okay. Again, the big reason I'm not a huge fan of King Waymon is because it is 4 to Digivolve, so you can't Digivolve into it on a Memory Tamer without passing your turn, and it has to attack in order to use its effect, which means there's going to be a window where your opponent can respond, and I'm not a big fan of that. Plesiomon being on Digivolve is significantly stronger and costs a memory less. So unless you are really, really wanting to lean into playing around this effect, I don't think he's necessarily worth it. I think there are definitely better options, but King Waymon is definitely a viable option, especially if you are going with Waymon package in your level 5 slots. Now, we also have another card. This is one that I was super hyped about, but didn't really end up delivering for me personally, and that is Regalicusmon from BT10. Now, this Regalicusmon has some really neat effects, but I'm realizing you really need to build around this card a little bit more to actually get full value. So it's 11 to play, 11,000 DP, and 3 to Digivolve. When Digivolving, you may trash the bottom 2 Digivolution cards of one of your opponent's Digimon, and when attacking, if your opponent has a Digimon with no Digivolution cards in play, you can play a level 3 and a level 4 Digimon from this Digimon's Digivolution sources without paying their memory costs. So, the ceiling for this card is actually quite high. If you are able to get off its effect and play both a 3 and a 4, you can potentially keep going. There's lots of effects, as we've already covered, that will tuck additional cards underneath. Regalicusmon is also generic, meaning you can play any of the level 4s that we mentioned and continue to get more value. But there are a lot of downsides to this card that you need to consider before actually including this in your Aegisdramon lists. And that specifically, it is a when attacking, and it does require your opponent to have a Digimon with no Digivolution sources. So you need to have multiple ways to strip sources if you really want to reliably proc this. The other big downside is this does not tuck any new cards and cannot play Digimon out from underneath your other Digimon. Plesiomon lets you play a Digimon from any of your Digivolution sources. It doesn't have to be from its own. And a lot of the effects are that same way. Even Megaseedramon in your level 5 slot can play level 3s out of anything. It doesn't have to be just under this card. So Regalicusmon not being able to bring things out from other sources, only his own, is again something that you need to make sure you keep in mind in playing this card. Now, there again are other things that continue to tuck. Things like the Crabmon from EX3 that we mentioned that will tuck additional cards, and then you can keep getting the effect off. And there are plenty of just unsuspend effects that will still make this card worth running. Garurumon and Aegisdramon that let you unsuspend, get additional attacks. There are definitely plays you can make with Regalicusmon, and I do think Regalicusmon is really, really cool. Just make sure you are aware of the limitations before you play it. There are limitations to keep in mind. Now, there are two other cards from early sets that I wanted to talk about because they also fit the theme. To begin with, we have Metal Garurumon all the way back from BT1. So this Metal Garurumon is 12 to play, 11,000 DP, 3 to Digivolve, has a very simple when attacking, play a level 4 or lower Digimon from this Digimon's Digivolution sources without paying its memory cost. So this is kind of like... I mean, it's a more reliable but less exciting version of Regalicusmon, where again, it's generic. You can play any level 4 or lower, but you can only play one of them at a time, so that's the downside over Regalicusmon. And again, it has to be out of this Digimon's Digivolution sources. It again is nice just because it has the generic. It lets you be a little more generous with what you play in your level 4 slots, but... yeah, this is just something to consider. I think it's a little weaker than Regalicusmon. I think if you're going to go that route, it's worth building around Regalicusmon and going for the big all-in play where you can play two things out at the same time. But Metal Garurumon is still an option. And a card that I haven't seen anyone talk about in a long time, but really should be talked about with this archetype, and that's Leopardmon. So if those of you who are into the Royal Knights and have been looking for a reason to play this card, this deck could be that reason. This Leopardmon is 12 to play, 11,000 DP, 4 to Digivolve, so a little rough there, but it has a when Digivolving effect, better than King Waymon. When Digivolving, you can play a level 4 or lower Digimon of one of your Digimon's Digivolution cards as another Digimon without paying its memory cost. So, right off the bat, there's some benefits here. Even though it's 4 to Digivolve, you get the when Digivolving to play something. It is generic for level 4 or lower, so again, nice diverse options for your level 4 slots, and it can play it from any of your Digimon's Digivolution sources. So even though not too many people have really been talking about Leopardmon, I think Leopardmon is actually really cool. This is definitely a card you could, in theory, consider playing in this deck, even if not just as a one-of. Leopardmon is very, very neat. It also has a Your Turn effect. This is the real good reason to play this card. On your turn, level 4 or lower Digimon have jamming. So not only are you going wide with this board, but now you can give them jamming so they can swing unimpeded and potentially get lots of security checks without actually losing your board state. So if you decide to play a single or maybe 1 or 2 copies of Leopardmon as fun tech, let me know, because I think this card is really cool and I would really like to see what it's capable of doing in this archetype. That's going to do it for our Megas. We're going to go ahead and clean these up. We've got our level 6s. So some really fun options to try. Your level 6 plays are, of course, always going to be where a lot of the excitement is when you're playing a Digimon deck, and this deck definitely has some really exciting plays. Honestly, even just the Plesiomon Metal Seedramon interaction, I absolutely love. I just think that is so cool. Now, as far as our level 7s go, of course, we have our namesake here, Mr. Aegisdramon. So we'll finally talk a little bit about this guy and go over all of his effects, what he does, and how to play with him. So he has 14 to play, 14,000 DP, and 4 to Digivolve. When Digivolving, you may play a blue level 3 Digimon, or one Digimon card with Seedramon in its name, or Aquatic in its traits, from one of your Digimon sources without paying its memory cost. So, this is where we're starting to talk about that aquatic umbrella, but it also includes the Seedramon name. So this is what's going to conveniently allow you to play out Metal Seedramon. Now, I really love it if we got additional copies of Metal Seedramon to see in the future. Obviously, the Metal Seedramon from BT1, I'm so in love with the fact that they actually made the card legitimately playable out of nowhere. I think that was really, really cool. But this leaves it open to lots of additional plays in the future. If we ever do get Giga Seedramon, this will let you play Giga Seedramon from sources. So I absolutely foresee that this deck is going to keep getting support in the future. And the way Aegisdramon was worded, it includes such a large blanket number of Digimon that it is... I was going to say future-proof, but it's kind of the opposite of future-proof. This card is going to be able to include lots of new cards as they come out, and it's going to be really exciting to see where this deck goes from here. Now, the other really important effect this card has, that is why this deck is really abusive to play against sometimes, on the opponent's turn, once per turn, if your opponent plays a Digimon, you can then again play it activates the on-Digivolve effect. So, if your opponent plays the Digimon, whether it be by effect or hard playing it, you can then activate the when Digivolve and play something of your own out. Now, since Plesiomon's Inheritable is on all turns, and This is letting you play things out. Basically, you can choose the level of Digimon you want to play, and so if they play anything at any point, you can then, as long as you have Pleasiumon and the sources, bounce something that is the same level as whatever you're playing. So it makes it very difficult to keep parity with this deck. It's a very, very powerful effect. Now, there is another level 7 I'm actually going to be playing in my personal list as a one-of. And the idea came to me after a friend of mine actually was playing regular BT1 Omnimon in his personal Aegisdramon list. That is Omnimon Merciful Mode. So Merciful Mode is a really interesting choice for this deck. If you've seen this card around, it's mostly good in like X-Antibody lists where you can spam multiple level 6s into a stack. Well, guess what? This may not be an X-Antibody deck, but if you remember Pleasiumon's effect, you can tuck a level 6 underneath, which means you can trigger this effect a little more reliably. It's 15 to play, 15,000 DP, 6 to digivolve from a red, blue, yellow, or green. It can also digivolve for 3 onto something with the name Omnimon, or a Digimon with Omnimon in its name. Now, the when digivolving effect of Merciful Mode: for each card with Mega and its traits in this Digimon's Digivolution sources, delete one of your opponent's Digimon, then place 10 cards from your opponent's trash at the bottom of their deck in any order. So, this is one of very few cards in the game right now that is trash hate. Being able to shuffle away 10 cards from your opponent's trash is definitely backbreaking against certain decks that are looking to do plays in the discard pile, specifically a lot of purple strategies. However, it's when digivolving effect, where you can pop an opponent's Digimon for every Mega in your sources. That's where I think this card really has a chance to shine in this deck. Being able to go into Pleasiumon, tuck a Mega, and then end your turn by going into this, popping any 2 of your opponent's Digimon that you want, it's very, very powerful. And as I mentioned, I do have a friend who's been playing BT1 Omnimon, another perfectly usable option. This is a tried and true card. Oh, I wanted to also mention, before I move on, Merciful Mode has a secondary effect. At the start of your turn, you trash the top card of this Digimon. Then if you do, you trash the top card of your opponent's security stack. So if you digivolve into Merciful Mode, and Merciful Mode makes it back to your turn, it will basically de-digivolve itself back to your level 6 again. And then when it does that, it will also trash the top card of your opponent's security, which could potentially help you close the game out. Now, since you are digivolving back to your level 6, if you actually manage to do that, it also gives you the ability to go up into Aegisdramon on the next turn. So I actually kind of like the fact that this de-digivolves. I think it's super, super nice, and having that little bit of extra damage is also super convenient. Anyway, sorry. Back to BT1 Omnimon. So this Omnimon, the first and the greatest, 15 to play, 15,000 DP, 6 to digivolve from a red or a blue. When digivolving, choose one of your opponent's Digimon. Delete all of your opponent's Digimon that share a name with that Digimon. So, if your opponent is playing something that has a lot of the same names, you can delete all of them at the same time. So you do have the potential of hitting more than one thing with this as well. Also has a when attacking effect where you can unsuspend this Digimon by returning one of this Digimon's level 6 sources to your hand. I'm not as big on that. Of course, it's additional aggression, but this is not a deck that really wants to be returning those to the hand. You want to be playing them out. So this is a really great card for closing the game out. It is great Digivolve removal, so you can end your turn by spot removing things. But in general, I personally think I like the Merciful Mode a little bit better. If not just for the fact that you'll probably be able to pop more than one Digimon, especially more than one Mega stack, pretty consistently. But that's just my 2 cents. And of course, what would any blue or red stack building deck be if you didn't potentially include Blitz Omnimon? 14 to play, 14,000 DP, 4 to digivolve from a red or a blue. When digivolving, Blitz, meaning you can attack even if you have passed the turn to your opponent. And when digivolving, unsuspend this Digimon. So the very stereotypical play where you swing with a level 6, get rid of the last security, digivolve Omnimon on top of it, unsuspend, and swing for game. It's always going to be exactly what it is. It's a very good effect. It's always been a very good effect. It will always be a very good effect. But if you're talking about me and my opinions on this particular deck, I really don't think that you necessarily need it. I think there's lots of other things you can do. It's a little bit win more. Since you're already going to be going so wide, you don't probably need that extra attack quite as much. But as always, if you want to consider playing Blitz Omni, by all means, you may have already be playing it and be seeing success with it. It does also have some inherent protection, which is kind of nice, where on all turns, if an opponent's effect would delete this Digimon or return it to its owner's hand or deck, you can prevent it from leaving play by trashing a level 6 in this Digivolution source. So, little extra bit of play there. Anyways, that is going to do it for the level 7s. You could also, in theory, play copies of Gabumon Bond of Friendship. It's actually a pretty cool tech option, kind of spicy if you want to play that as well. It's a little more situational since you need to have a Tamer in play, and I'm not playing a whole lot of Tamers in this list, but that is also something to consider. Now we're going to move on to our Tamers. There's a couple of these I wanted to talk about. To begin with, I do think this deck really, really wants to have memory setters, and there's plenty, of course, to choose from. The best one for this deck, I think, is going to, of course, be Davis. Shocking nobody, Davis is probably hands down the best blue tamer in the game. 4 to play, set your memory to 3 at the start of the turn. On play, reveal the top 3 cards of your deck. You can add any blue or green, any blue and a green Digimon from among them to your hand. Place the remaining cards on the bottom. So, basically like Blue Memory Boost, where you can look at your top cards when you play this, and then you can add one of them to your hand. It's a consistency piece that also sets your memory. Another really good generic memory setter for blue is Kiyashiro from, which one was this? BT9. Again, memory setter, 4 to play, set your memory to 3, start a turn. On your turn, if you attack with the Digimon that has Jellymon in its name or is level 5 or higher, and you have 7 or fewer cards in hand, you can suspend this tamer to draw a card. So, very standard draw engine. We also have Matt Ashida from BT1. Again, memory setter, same deal. Your turn, when you play a blue Digimon, you can suspend this tamer to trash the bottom source of one of your opponent's Digimon. So you can think of this as just kind of a spicy little tech option. I don't necessarily like a lot of memory setters. I usually prefer 2, maybe 3 in the list that I run. But if you don't want to run just a bunch of Davis, here's another good option you consider. Since you're going to be playing things out anyways, why not trash a couple of sources? You can honestly hit some pretty good inheritables that way. We also have TK Takashi from BT8, another memory setter with the effect on the opponent's turn where if they attack one of your blue Digimon, you can suspend this tamer to draw a card. So another source of card advantage, but I think Kiyashiro probably outweighs TK a little bit if you're talking about viability. But it is kind of nice that even if they swing into your rookie, you'll be able to draw. And then, of course, one of the other most infamous, notorious blue tamers of all time, Sora and Joe. This is not a memory setter. It is 4 to play. At the start of your turn, if your opponent has a Digimon with no Digivolution sources, you can gain an extra 2 memory. This is one of the extra cards that I would say I'm running 3 tamers in my current list. This is definitely one of the better ones to consider if you're looking for a third tamer. Like I'm running 2 memory setters and then 1 go above tamer. Sora Joe is a really great option for that. So Sora Joe also has an effect on your turn. When you attack with a blue Digimon, you can suspend this tamer to trash 2 sources from one of your opponent's Digimon. So it actually is self-enabling, and I know a lot of people don't like that, and I completely understand why. This is a very powerful tamer and absolutely worth considering for a slot. However, it is worth mentioning that there will be certain matchups this card just doesn't do anything. X-Antibody is still the option card is still seen play in a lot of X-Antibody lists, and that will hard shut this card down. So just keep that in mind. But another tamer that I am actually going to be swapping Sora Joe in my personal list out for, and I'm really excited to try, is actually a dual tamer, Matt and Sora. So this tamer is not a memory setter. It is 4 to play. At the start of your main phase, if you have 8 or more cards in hand, gain a memory. If your opponent has 8 or more cards in hand, gain a memory. This is an effect that is going to be live very, very frequently. One of the cool things about Digimon is it is a game where drawing cards happens a lot. Having cards or hands above 8 cards happens very, very frequently, especially when you start getting into the late game. So this card is very likely going to gain you that 2 memory very consistently, and even if it's not getting you 2, you can at least gain 1, because this deck, I will almost promise you, is gonna have 8 cards in hand for most of the game. So, it also has a very important Your Turn effect. When one of your blue or red Digimon becomes unsuspended, I can suspend this tamer to return one of your opponent's level 3 Digimon to its owner's hand. So, only being able to hit level 3s may not sound spectacular on the surface, but remember what I said when we were talking about level 3s and 4s. One of the biggest problems that this deck tends to have is getting floodgated out. If your opponent plays Palmumon or Pillowmon, you have to out that card or you're going to have a lot of issues. Sora Matt is able to do that. You can if you unsuspend a Digimon, you can bounce those floodgates back to the hand and continue your turn. Now, you may also remember me mentioning we had Thetismon, one of the Digimon I mentioned for level 5s, has an unsuspend effect. So you can actually swing with Thetismon, trash 2 cards, unsuspend it, suspend this, bounce something, and then continue with your turn. So that's actually a really cool way of utilizing this Tamer if you are deciding to play it. And I am playing. I'm going to be playing 3 Thetismon and a copy of Sora-Jo in my personal list. So I'm really excited to try that synergy out and see how it works. So that's going to do it for our Tamers. There are, of course, lots and lots and lots and lots of Tamers that you can consider for your list, but I think these are probably the best 6. These would be my best suggestions. Now, to finish up the video, we are, of course, going to be talking about options, and there's lots of options to talk about here. Blue is a very diverse color and has a lot going for it, so there's a lot of different things that you can consider. To begin with, we're going to be talking about 2 cards together, Kaiser Nail and Tidal Wave. These are both cards that directly support the game plan of the deck. Both of them have effects that play things out of your Digivolution sources. Kaiser Nail is 4 memory and just has the effect where you can play any Digimon you want from one of your Digivolution sources. It's very generic. Tidal Wave is very literally the exact same effect, except you can choose 2 Digimon cards in the Digivolution sources of one of your Digimon and play them as their own unique Digimon. Now, it does, again, worth mentioning, it's not 2 from any. It specifically is 2 sources from one of your Digimon. So, again, play Tidal Wave, keep that in mind, make sure you play it correctly. But these cards will basically let you be a little more diverse and a little more forgiving with what kind of cards you can play, again, in your level 4 slots, your level 5 slots. These are ways you can play with BT1 Zudomon if you decide to go that route. Very, very standard choices. We do, of course, have Hammer Spark. Hammer Spark is a very reasonable option in any blue deck, especially in Aegisdramon, because you do draw so many cards so consistently. BT7 Gomamon makes Hammer Spark potentially even better, just because drawing 2 cards, drawing 2 cards, drawing 2 cards, losing 1 card to gain a memory is not going to hurt you nearly as much. And of course, the security effect of gaining 2 memory is always a potential threat your opponent has to play around, especially if they know you're going to be playing copies of Hammer Spark at all. Of course, we can also try Ice Wall. Ice Wall is a great one-of because it has to be a one-of. It is limited to a single copy. For those of you who don't know, it is 1 memory to play. Then, until your next turn, all of your opponents gain, when attacking, lose 2 memory until the turn comes back to you again. So basically, this floodgates your opponent where anything they swing with loses them 2 memory. Basically helps to buy you an extra turn to make sure your opponent is going to have a hard time aggroing you down on a potentially crucial turn. You can also, of course, consider playing Blue Memory Boost. Blue Memory Boosts, on any of the Memory Boosts really, have kind of earned my respect. That 2 memory on a future turn, I have absolutely underestimated how valuable that can be. If you've played against Metal Garurumon or any of the decks that play their respective Memory Boost, you know how backbreaking this card can be. It can cause some decks to just win out of nowhere. Now we're going to start talking a little bit about removal options. Of course, we have the very standard Cocytus Breath, 7 to play. Return 1 of your opponent's Digimon to its owner's hand. This is from the first structure deck for blue that ever came out. It is your granddaddy of removal spells for blue, just generic bouncing effects. If you want to be a little cheeky, you can go V Wingblade. V Wingblade is literally the same effect, except it is 1 memory cheaper, for the cost of not being able to hit a level 7. It is a level 6 or lower Digimon that you can return to the hand. We also have a card that just released that I think is worth considering in any blue deck, just because I think it is abusively powerful. That is Sorai. So Sorai released in EX3. It is 4 memory to play. Has the effect to trash the top 4 Digivolution cards of one of your opponent's Digimon. Then until the end of your opponent's turn, your opponent's Digimon with no Digivolution cards cannot attack. So this can potentially strip an entire Mega down to bare bones, and on top of that, makes it so all of your opponent's Digimon with no sources can't attack. This is an incredibly powerful card. This is going to potentially win games out of nowhere, especially if it's checked in security, since its security is just activate this card's main effect. And one last card I did want to talk about, because I think this is a bit of a sleeper card. It's one I'm actually going to be trying out again in my own list. Originally is a one of, maybe more, we'll see. But I have 1 spot left, and I'm going to be filling that slot with Rattlestar. Now, Rattlestar is an option that has very much flown under the radar. Now, if this card ever saw play, I was not aware of it. I feel like this card has always kind of been under the radar, but again, it is meta-specific. So this is a 5 memory removal spell. Has the effect give me a minute to actually explain this because it's a lot. So return one of your opponent's level 5 or lower Digimon to its owner's hand. So again, ticking down from V Wingblade. However, it also has a continuation. If your opponent has 3 or more Digimon in play, you can instead return one of your opponent's Digimon to the bottom of its owner's deck, trashing all the sources of that Digimon. This is the main reason this card really piqued my interest. This is one of very few blue cards that can permanently remove one of your opponent's Digimon. Now, they have to have 3 Digimon in play to be able to use that effect, but it can still bounce a level 5 or lower. That's a pretty wide range. Now, it may not be able to bounce a Mega, but that's only if they have 2 or less Digimon. If they have 3, doesn't matter. This card is strictly better than all of the other removal options. Not bouncing to hand where they can replay it, tucking it to the bottom of their deck where they are not going to see it again unless they literally deck out. Currently, Digimon does not have any shuffle effects in the game, so what goes to the bottom stays there. It is, for all intents and purposes, gone from the game. It's one of the reasons I'm not a huge fan of the current Mulligan rules. But I personally think Rattlestar is absolutely a sleeper card, and I'm going to be trying at least 1 copy of this in my list as a tech option. There are a lot of go-wide decks right now that are going to have this card live. Being able to only pay 5 memory to tuck any of your opponent's Digimon you want gets around a lot of deletion effects. It gets around Examon's Evade. There's lots of real benefits to playing Rattlestar, so I'm going to be trying a single copy. I would strongly suggest that you guys try a copy too. But yeah, with that, guys, thank you all so much again for joining me. This has been, like I said, a video I've been really wanting to make for a while. I absolutely adore the Aegisdramon archetype, and I'm so glad to have finally been able to make a real proper deep dive video. This is my first non-black deep dive video, and what better deck to put it for would be Aegisdramon. Aegisdramon just has such a diverse range of ways to build this deck. It absolutely deserved a deep dive video, and I am here to deliver on that. So, as always, thank you all so much for joining me. I hope you guys are still enjoying the content. If you are, feel free to like and subscribe, and hey, leave a comment down below. Let me know if there are any other cards that I missed. The number of cards you can play in Aegisdramon is vast, so I'm sure I did not cover all of them. I tried to be as comprehensive as I could while not being a full 2-hour long deep dive video, but yeah, please leave comments down below on how you guys are enjoying Aegisdramon as a deck, if there's any other fun tech choices you guys have found. But yeah, with that, I am an avid herpetologist. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your night, and I will see you all next time.